Good evening, everyone. We are going to call this meeting to order now. It is 6:37
Son
p.m.
las 6:37.
Sorry. On April 20th, 2023, and this is a public meeting of the City of Portland Police Accountability Commission Subcommittee on Board Membership. I am Corinne Villavasso, and I will be facilitating this evening's discussion. And if the Spanish language interpreters, Lizette and Jose, can please give the information on Spanish language interpretation. Jose, Lizette?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, Corinne, but I lost you for the very first minute there. Can you go over that again? And if you can place us in the room so we can interpret simultaneously.
Yes, but at the moment we're asking that you read the portion to the public right now, and then we'll move you into the room for interpretation.
Okay, perfect,
Yes.
perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
You're welcome. Interpretación de idiomas, tenemos tanto interpretación del idioma español como interpretación de idioma de señas. Es disponible a través de Zoom para la reunión de hoy. Esto es una reunión pública sujeta al código de conducta y administrativa bajo las provisiones de la ley de reuniones públicas del estado de Oregón, ORS 192.610-690. Funcionalidad del chat de Zoom. La transcripción del chat será incluida en el acta de la reunión para esta junta. Funcionalidad de Zoom y preguntas y respuestas para preguntas solamente, no para comentarios. No todas las preguntas serán contestadas. Si se responde o se contesta, ambos, la pregunta como la respuesta quedarán incluidas en el acta de la reunión para esta junta. Otras preguntas serán incluidas en la planificación de la agenda para las futuras PAC y reuniones del subcomité.
Thank you.
Welcome.
The city also offers ACL interpretation, which is being provided by Kevin and Katie. Are they here yet? Let's see. They are. Thank you so much. Please pin their video feed to see their interpretation throughout the meeting. The closed captioning is turned on in Zoom as another means of assistance, but please note that this is an automatic captioning service and it is not always accurate. The city supports access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and can provide other language support as well. Please email in advance of future public meetings, either as a response to a public meeting notice or directly to policeaccountability@portlandoregon.gov to ask for other access assistance, including interpretation into other languages. This meeting is a public meeting subject to the City of Portland's Administrative Code and Oregon State law, and it is being recorded. For this meeting, the chat function is enabled for commission members to communicate with each other. Members of the public will be able to ask questions during the Zoom using the Zoom's Q&A feature. As the commissioners are presenting and/or discussing things, if attendees have questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A. We hope to use this feature to help guide our conversation during the meeting and future meetings agenda topics. We'd like to be clear that not all questions will be answered during the meeting, but if answered, both the question and answer will be visible to you and will become part of the meeting record. To access this feature, just click on the Q&A icon in the middle of your screen. I will now turn it over to co-chairs to go over the land acknowledgement that is displayed at City Hall.
Thank you, Corinne. The Police Accountability Commission uses a land acknowledgement on display at City Hall. We acknowledge that the rivers, lakes, streams, and lands of the lower Willamette River rest upon the occupied territories of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Clackamas, Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes. We recognize the many villages, traditions, cultures, and relationships that existed along the river since time immemorial. We recognize these tribes stewarded these lands and rivers since time immemorial for future generations. We recognize and undertake responsibility for the destruction of the river and land, of traditional food sources, sacred places, and multifaceted ways of life. We acknowledge the economic and social values that enabled the harm to the river, including systemic racism, classism, and other systems of oppression that perpetuated harm against Black, Indigenous, and immigrant communities along the river. With this acknowledgement, we commit to honoring and learning from the past and working towards a more equitable and sustainable future for the lower Willamette River. We commit to seeking solutions that acknowledge the inequities of past socioeconomic policies and the harm done to people and our relationships to these lands and waters.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tiersa. We will now go into the community agreements. I'm going to ask that you take a moment to read this to yourself. Thank you, Victoria. Next slide. Next slide, please, to part 3. Thank you. If you notice that a conversation is coming close to violating a community agreement, please call your fellow commission members and gently and with compassion. If you are called in, please take a moment to consider how you can best participate in the space while respecting the community agreements and making space for everyone. Do we all commit to the following? Do we all commit to the following community agreements for today's meeting and to gently call in our colleagues and collaborators if needed? Thank you. I will now pass it on to co-chairs to discuss the timeline.
This meeting is a part of the Police Accountability Commission Structure and Details Phase of Work, which focuses on the form of the new system. Future phases of work will develop how the new system relates to the rest of the city government and the transition plan from our current system to the new one. The commission will work until August 31st, 2023, and will present our proposed changes to City Council for their consideration and approval. This slide shows the outcome documents for the structure and details phase based on the agenda and scope approved by the commission. This subcommittee focuses on how the board's membership will be structured, including board size, appointment, qualifications, reasons for removal, and more. This slide is the current project plan for the structure and details phase of the Police Accountability Commission's work. It will be updated as needed throughout this phase of work. This slide is for members of the public to be able to understand how the commission gets from now through the end of the phase, which focuses on identifying areas of agreement among commission members as to the form the new system will take. Today's meeting fits into the light blue box with the red border near the middle of the screen. And following today, here are the upcoming meetings of the PAC. We'd like to highlight If the subcommittee finishes its work tonight, the next full commission meeting will be on Monday, April 24th. If the subcommittee does not finish its work tonight, the subcommittee will be meeting again on Monday, April 24th, and the full commission meeting will meet on April 27th. Today's meeting agenda includes time for co-chairs to discuss updates on the draft since our last meeting on April 10th, and then discussion on the text of the draft areas of agreement on board membership. This may include referring the document to the full commission, a process which the public will have the ability to comment on before a decision is made.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. We'll now move on to pass it on to co-chairs or staff to describe the updates of the draft areas of agreement on board membership and what remains to be discussed. Co-chairs?
Sure. So from our last meeting, we have a proposed definition or starting draft definition for law enforcement agency that we will be looking over. And we have proposed text to reorganize or resolve the alternates section language. We also have proposed updates to the removal requirements and process section that was proposed by co-chairs at the last meeting, which involves a small update to section G1 and then swapping the order of G2 and G3. And then we have another update revolving about how council and the amount of days that they shall have to receive a nomination. And then if I missed anything, I welcome staff to go ahead and.
Staff?
Yeah, so in terms of proposed changes, the other one is since the last meeting is a wholesale update to the section D, member support and compensation, and then Tirsa, co-chair Tirsa mentioned the other 5 parts of the document that are yet to be resolved as well. So all that's correct as well. Thanks.
Thank you, staff, and thank you, co-chair Tirsa. We will now move to discussing the draft areas of agreement on board membership and can walk through the outline documents and some other resources if needed. We ask you to follow our normal discussion rules. Please be brief each time you speak, even though you can speak multiple times. Please be facilitated. And remember that we use a weighted stack in our discussion. Finally, please be forward-looking in your comments. Would the co-chairs like to get us started?
Yes, thank you, Corinne. So we'll just start from reviewing the document from top to bottom. And once at the compensation portion, since it's our first time reviewing that section, we will have 5-minute time discussion, and then we will circle back to it. So we'll start off with law enforcement agency definition, and I'll go ahead and read that, the proposed text. Agencies that, so law enforcement agency, agencies that primarily employ police officers, corrections officers, or prosecutors. This includes county sheriffs, municipal police departments established by a university, state police, tribal police, and law enforcement agencies of the federal government. It also includes district attorneys' offices. Finally, it includes correctional departments. Agencies which perform duties related to investigating allegations of officer misconduct or reviewing police policies and practices which do not employ police officers are not considered law enforcement agencies under this definition.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. Do we have any further discussion, comments, questions, feedback, or points of clarification? Okay. Seeing that there are no hands raised at this moment. Co-facilitator, do you see anyone that I may have overlooked? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So do we have any strong opposition to the definitions on law enforcement agency? Do we have a general agreement on the law enforcement definitions? Okay, I see Commissioner Sophia has her hand raised. Sophia?
I think she was just showing consensus there, Facilitator Corinne.
Thank you, appreciate that. Okay, now that we have consensus on agreement for law enforcement agency, may we move forward? Thank you. Co-chair?
So section A, size of the board and panel sizes. A1, size of the board. The oversight board shall have proposed text 33 members. A2,
Do we have any comments, questions, or feedback on the text amendment from 25 members to 33 members? Okay, seeing that there are no hands raised, do we have any strong opposition for the change of the size of the board from 25 to 33 members? Do we have a general agreement for the size of the board from 25 to 33 members? Thank you. May we move on? Co-chair?
A2, alternates. The board shall have alternates recruited from qualified board member applicants and from former members of the oversight board. Alternates shall provide historical context, institutional memory, lived experience, and institutional or other expertise to the discussions of the oversight board. Alternates may not serve on panels reviewing complaints, nor may they vote at the full oversight board. The oversight board may define other responsibilities and rights of alternates in its bylaws.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. Do we have any comments, feedback, questions, or need points of clarification on the text change for alternates? Seeing that there are no hands raised at this moment, I would like to ask, is there any strong opposition to the text change for alternates? Is there a general agreement for the text change for alternates? Thank you. May we move forward?
B, qualifications and selection criteria. B1, makeup of the board. The board shall predominantly have community members who have been impacted by over-policing practices. 2, the board shall have community members that have worked with populations directly affected by over-policing. 3, the board shall have members who have experience doing community outreach. A, it is important to center the voices of the community when implementing changes to the oversight board.
Thank you, co-chair. Staff?
Hi, yes, so this is the fourth thing on the list of 7 to be addressed today. And for this one, there is a proposed change that was discussed to add the word predominantly. It hit the 5 minutes that we were working off of last meeting. And so the subcommittee moved on and flagged it to come back to later. And so the first thing, but not the only thing that the subcommittee needs to do is determine if they'd like to add that or otherwise adjust that. Just a quick note that this section is footnoted, and we were unable to find the reference to where the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement went. So just on the off chance that we can't find that, we would probably suggest removing that at the full commission. No need to do anything about that now, but if anyone remembers who wrote that, who could send that link in, that would be great.
Thank you, staff. Do we have any further discussion, comments, questions, or staff just gave us clarification on adding the word predominantly? KC, Commissioner KC?
So I think I'm just concerned about the potential vagueness of this. I think if I recall correctly, which I may not, for our group, it was you have to come from communities that have been impacted by over-policing practices. But in this language, we were saying the community members themselves have to have been impacted by over-policing practices. And I wonder what that's going to look like in practice when they are selecting board members, sort of what you are going to have to demonstrate to show that you have been impacted by over-policing practices. I worry that will shrink the potential applicant pool to the point that then if we're saying it has to be predominantly, I read that as the majority of them have to be from that community. So if we don't have 17 or more people who can sort of demonstrate that they themselves have been impacted by over-policing practices, then you potentially would not be able to fill out the full board. So I think maybe if we added back in language that says they should be from a community impacted by over-policing practices, rather than saying they themselves have been impacted by over-policing practices, that might make it less of a concern.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Commissioner Sharif?
Yeah, I agree with Casey. When I proposed that we put the word predominantly in there, I think what we were really trying to do is define, have a measure in place that we didn't have, 33 members and 29 of them have never been impacted by police. We wanted to ensure that we would have a good match, but what I feel like we could run into is exactly what Casey was saying, is that we put the word predominantly in there and it could, we could ultimately be trying to describe that you'd have to pretty much be a unicorn to fit into this. We're making it too hard to be able to have, good people on the board. So I don't feel strongly we have to use the word predominantly there. Maybe there's other ways we can just be assured that we would have a good mix of people in there that have the experience we're looking for.
Thank you, Commissioner Sharif. Do we have any other comments, feedback, questions? Okay, do we have, okay, making sure no one else raised their hands, okay. Do we?
Sorry for the noise back there, but I lowered and then raised my hand again, and I
Oh,
just wanted
okay.
to clarify that.
Okay.
So,
Commissioner Casey? Go ahead.
responding to Commissioner Cherie's concern, and I know this may make the process sort of convoluted if we have multiple proposed changes going on at once. So I will trust our staff to figure that out. But maybe it would make sense, instead of saying they shall predominantly, just say that the members who are people who are members of communities impacted by over policing practices shall be given preference in the selection. So that kind of it gets across the point that we want them to have influence on the new board, and want them to be selected when they have applied, without sort of putting a hard cap on that would potentially make it hard to fill out seats, if those seats need to be filled out. Because the other thing I think I am trying to be cognizant of, is trying to strike the balance between elevating those voices and not creating a situation where the same people who are advocates in all of these spaces are having to do all of the work everywhere.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Any other comments or feedback? Commissioner Cherie, do you have, your hand is still raised. Do you have something else that you would like to add?
My hand didn't go down when I spoke. I don't know.
That's
I'm good.
okay. Okay. Commissioner Sophia?
Yes, I was just thinking if we could also use some language to say that the panel should reflect members of communities, these specific communities as well. I don't know if that would work. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. So, do we have any more? We've been at 5 minutes discussing this, so want to move forward to consensus. Do we have any strong opposition to the text change from Commissioner Casey and Commissioner Cherie that states applicants who are members of the communities that have been impacted by over-policing practices shall have preference in selection? Do we have any strong opposition? Do we have a general agreement to this text change? Thank you. May we move forward?
B2, subject matter expertise.
Sorry, there are comments on B2, but they all relate to the same question that was in B3, which is ultimately about what is the definition of a law enforcement agency, which was already resolved. Sorry to interrupt you there, Co-Chair Tirsa. The next thing on the list is section C9.
Thank you, staff, for that clarification. Co-Chair Tirsa, C9.
C9, council shall review applications of nominees to the board and vote whether to approve each appointment within 45 days of receiving the nomination.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. Do we have any further discussion, comments, questions, feedback, or points of clarification? Okay, seeing that there are no hands raised. Do we have any strong opposition to the text change within 45 days of receiving the nomination? Do we have a general agreement to the text change within 45 days of receiving the nomination? Oops. We did have a hand raised. Who was that? Oh, it went down. Thank you. Can we go back to that section, staff, so we can make sure I cover the other text change? Do we have any strong opposition for adding the word vote here? Do we have a general agreement for adding the term vote? Staff?
Sorry, that word is already in there. It's not a proposed change, it's just a comment on it.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Just the within 45 days text.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification. Moving right along. May we move on? Thanks.
And the next section after C9 is sections G1 through G3. So we'll scroll in a minute.
Removal, requirements and process. The board may request that the city council remove a board member for good cause. Good cause for removal includes unexcused absences, excessive excused absences. Excused absences include unforeseen events, health reasons, being out of town, or missed meetings due to conflicts of interest, major undisclosed conflicts of interest, loss of eligibility, such as moving away from the city of Portland, unmet minimum participation or workload requirement, breach of confidentiality, inactivity in board activities, including subcommittee work or hearing participation, failure to complete mandatory training, and then proposed added text, which says misconduct such as harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. Other reasons for removal could include resignation, death, or incapacitation. And 2, the Bureau of Human Resources shall investigate allegations of misconduct regarding board members and communicate their findings to the Oversight Board. The Bureau of Human Resources may remove a member following their investigation. This is also proposed text change addition. And then 3, removal of a board member prior to the end of their term requires a vote of City Council or a decision of the Bureau of Human Resources. So proposed addition of text are highlighted in red.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. Do we have any further discussion, comments, questions, feedback, or points of clarification for these text changes? For misconduct, the Bureau of Human Resources, and the removal of board members. Do we have any further discussions from the commission? From commissioners? Still seeing no hands raised at this moment. Is there any strong opposition to the text change for Roman numeral 9, 2, and 3? Okay, do we have a general agreement for the text change? Thank you. I see Commissioner Casey has his hand raised. Commissioner Casey?
Sorry, that was just me expressing my agreement. I had to go off camera to eat dinner.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cherie? Oh, okay, thank you. Wanted to make sure that I saw a little hand. I was wondering if that was, okay, thank you. Want to make sure. May we move on? Staff?
Yeah, so before that was the last of the subsections needing to get discussed. There is still the full section on member support and compensation. Just a quick question for the subcommittee. There was there's a phrase in G1, which is hearing participation, and wanted to ask if that was designed to encapsulate all panels or just hearings panels. Because as you may recall from section A3, there are 3 types of panels. One is for hearings, one is for appeals, and one is for due process. So just wanted to make sure if that was an oversight in terms of terminology changes that were reflected in one part of the document and not elsewhere, or if the intention was to limit it to specifically hearings.
I just wanted to say it's not limited to hearings, it's for panels as well. Just check with Cameron too on that.
I think I agree. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little scatterbrained at the moment.
Thank you. Staff?
It was just a question. I mean,
Okay,
member wants to propose changing it, they can, but staff doesn't do that. So just, yeah.
okay. Just asking, may we move on from the question? May we move on? Okay. Cherie, Government Commissioner Cherie?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and make the proposal that we add in the other 2 so that it says hearings. Help me out, Samir.
You could say hearings, appeals, and due process panels, or you could just say panels, up to you.
I like due process hearings. Perfect.
And I'll just note in the Q&A that Commissioner Dan noted that all 3 are also hearings. So just cross-check that if that's okay between now and if it's okay to mirror the language used in the officer accountability document, we could do that too.
Thank you, staff, and thank you, Commissioner Cherie. Do we have any comments or feedback on this proposed change to the text to include hearing, appeals, and due process panels? Co-chair Tirsa?
I would like to add the misconduct hearings as well.
Can you clarify where you'd like to add that?
Yeah, so after inactivity and board activities, including subcommittee work or hearing, appeals, or due process panel. Committee work or hearing. After appeals.
Thank you, Co-chair Tirsa. Do we have any further comments or feedback, questions on this proposed text change? Seeing that there are no hands raised, is there any strong opposition to the proposed text change for including appeals, misconduct, or due process panels? Do we have a general agreement to that text change? Thank you. At this moment, before we get into the heavy discussion of compensation, we're going to take a small 5-minute break. We're back to it. Staff, whenever you're ready. Co-chairs?
I think might be worth giving a little bit of a preface here. That's okay with you, Co-Chair Tirsa?
Yes, please.
Okay. So at the last meeting, there was another version of this text, which was sort of briefly scrolled through, but not fully reviewed, that had been drafted and submitted. That text got revised and resubmitted by the drafting group for this particular section, which they can, definitely talk and give more information there. This section has 6 subsections. One that gives general framework for support for individual board members. That support does not mean exclusively financial compensation. There's a lot of other things in here. So there's a general statement about it. Reimbursement for expenses incurred is section D2. The financial compensation section is D3. Benefits is D4. Then there's a section on protection and safety of board members. Finally, state support and protection, support and protection for oversight board service, which has to do with the board's ability to advocate for things at other levels of government and to the city for other protections. So for this section, co-chairs wanted to use the 5-minute rule, do a pass through. If anything can be resolved quickly, then it'd be resolved. If it can't, then we flag it for further discussion. After finishing going through all 6 subsections, we'd circle back and resolve any outstanding items on that exceeded 5 minutes. And that is the rest. That's the last part of the document to review. So I'll pass it back over to co-chairs.
Okay, so D, member support and compensation. D1, support for individual board members. A, the oversight board will be a unique type of volunteer service, different from most volunteer boards, committees, and commissions. Individual members shall face unique challenges, including the commitment, exposure to trauma, and risks to privacy and safety associated with their service. The board shall create systems supporting and protecting individual members.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. Is there any comments or discussions, feedback? We're gonna proceed. Thank you.
B, members of the oversight board shall receive compensation for their services to promote equity, access to membership, and ensure that the board is representative of the community at large. C, the oversight board shall allocate roughly 10% of its annual budget to individual member support. D, the board shall regularly review details of its member support and compensation and revise as needed.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. Do we have any comments, feedback, or questions, or any points of clarification for section D1, support for individual board members? Seeing that there are no hands raised at this moment, do we have any strong opposition to the text for support for individual board members? Can we move on?
D2, reimbursement for expenses. The board shall ensure that expenses associated with service on the board are not borne by individual board members. This may include reimbursements or per dimes. It may also include the board directly providing the item or service. This may include reimbursements or per dimes. It may also include the board directly providing the item or service. B, reimbursable expenses may include at minimum 1, travel, 2, food, 3, training, including self-selected trainings by individual members, care services, including for child, adult, elder, and other care.
Do we have any comments, feedback? Points of clarification? Seeing that there are no hands raised, may we move forward? May we move on? Thank you.
D3, financial compensation. Members shall receive a stipend no less than the maximum allowed under the Federal Volunteer Protection Act, currently $500 a year, reflecting their duties and activities to support the board outside of meetings and hearings. B, the board shall provide financial compensation in the form of a nominal fee to board members on a per-hour basis for public meetings and other regular public services. 1, the nominal fee shall not exceed 20% of the hourly compensation rate of city employees identified by the board as conducting the same type of work. 2, the board shall review the rate of compensation annually following the annual release of city compensation plans. C, the board shall ensure at least the same level of compensation for members serving in special or unique ways, including panels. D, each member of the board may decline to receive financial compensation or to receive a lesser amount at their individual discretion.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. Do we have any further discussion, comments, feedback, questions, or need points of clarification? Seeing that there are no hands raised, may we move forward? Thank you.
D4, benefits for board members. Mental health support. 1, mental health support and services shall be provided free of charge to all board members. 2, the board shall have access to the City Employee Assistance Program or choose other mental health service providers. B, other benefits. To the degree allowable by law for volunteers, the board shall provide other benefits for board members, including health insurance, including medical, dental, and vision. 2, life and disability insurance. 3, retirement support.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Are there any comments, feedback, questions? Points of clarification for section benefits for board members? Seeing that there are no hands raised, may we move forward?
D5, protection and safety. The board shall ensure personal protection for individual board members. The board shall work to ensure that its meetings, hearings, and other activities are secure. B, the board shall also provide additional protection services to individual members upon request.
Thank you. Any comments? Feedback? questions? Okay, Commissioner Casey.
So I like all of this kind of spirit. I would say I worry a little bit about the language shall provide upon request, because I worry that creates kind of a mandate that could potentially be pretty expensive if there is someone who is on the board who is requesting services that are not necessary, or levels of service that are not necessary. So I think I would also either want to say may provide upon request so that it can be left to the board's discretion what services are necessary, or have some kind of shall provide if determined to be necessary, something along those lines.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Do we have any comments or feedback to Commissioners Casey text change proposal? Okay. Do we, Sophia, Commissioner Sophia?
Thank you. My only comment, and this is just a question for thought. If we add, if determined to be necessary, my thought is, how do we do that as a board? How do you decide whether someone needs assistance or not? That's my only thought. I'm just kind of going, sometimes it's about there may not be sufficient evidence. I don't know. I'm just what ifing it. So what kind of, how would it be determined? That's my whole thought. By whom? You said by the board, but how would the board know if they need it or not? That's my question. How do you prove such things? Because sometimes those things can be very hard to prove, that you need assistance. Because I've known cases of people being followed by the police, and you know, maybe you don't catch it on camera, or things like that. So how do you do that? That's my only question of thought for the group.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Casey?
Yeah, I really appreciate that, and think it is sort of a, we really want to make sure that we are not making people feel unsafe or uncomfortable. And I think this is something that, at least in my opinion, it is, I like to leave to the board, because they'll be the ones who are actually seeing sort of the circumstances of what is happening. And if they need to set up some standard for what kind of evidence can happen, and what, whether there needs to be like a vote of the board, or if there are standard security that people can request, then they can certainly do that. But I just, I don't know, maybe it's a lack of sort of foresight on my part, but I feel like there's just so many different scenarios that trying to imagine them from our position and sort of put them in place here is just, I don't know, daunting to me.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Commissioner Sophia, you have something you would like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, being as you can see, a single Black female, I have been tracked by people and have been able to do nothing about it. By police, it's very hard to prove that someone is tracking you. You can say they are, but you don't really have any evidence of it. People driving by your home, you just can't prove a lot of this, is where I'm going. I just kind of want to leave it open, knowing that I'm not sure if anyone would do this unnecessarily. But I just don't see anyone asking for personal protection when they don't need it. That's just me personally, because if someone's asking for it, they obviously feel threatened.
Thank you.
That's just-
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. We're going, if it's okay, we're going to move forward and circle back to this once we get through the entire document. And we can further discuss it. We'll circle back. Co-chair?
The sixth, support and protections for oversight board service. The oversight board shall be empowered to advocate to other governmental entities, including the state of Oregon, for protections for oversight board members. These protections may include, but are not limited to, the services provided by the board members being recognized by the state of Oregon as official services for excused absences from work as a service to the state, local government, akin to jury duty. The board members being protected from prohibited acts by employers against board members. C, board members being protected from unlawful employment practices regarding insurance. And D, personal security, including protection of confidentiality of personal data and privacy for board members and applicants, as well as protection from harassment and threats.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. There any comments or feedback, questions, points of clarification on this section?
Just a quick note, I'm gonna turn off the track changes just for a second because there are a lot of track changes in this section and might be easier to read if like that. And then when we start discussion, I'll turn back on track changes just for transparency of changes.
Thank you. Do we have any comments, questions, feedback? May we move on? Thank you.
Corinne, staff has his hand raised.
Staff?
Yes, hi. So that is everything. So there's not, that's why there's nothing to scroll to at the moment.
Oh, great.
Members could bring up anything else they may want, but there's no particular there's nothing that's particularly
So let's go back to the proposed text change that Commissioner Casey and Commissioner Sophia was discussing. And we can try to wrap that up if we can today. Yes, here. So do we have Commissioner Casey?
Can I propose a change to my change?
Sure.
So to sort of attempt to address the points that Commissioner Sophia has made, which I think are very good, I would recommend that instead of changing the shall to a may, and if determined to be necessary, because I agree that puts people in a position where they're sort of having to convince their fellow board members of the legitimacy of their concerns, and that potentially means that marginalized people who are already not listened to are going to once again be in a position of kind of having to justify themselves. I would say we keep the shall, And instead of having if determined to be necessary, we insert if feasible, because that means that every concern is taken seriously. And the only question then is sort of, do we have the resources and the logistics to actually implement the protection services that are being requested? Because that's really my only concern, is we don't want the budget of the entire agency to end up getting chewed up with protection services. But if they're asking for something that can reasonably be done within the resources of the agency, I think it's reasonable to say, yeah, the agency should grant that.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Commissioner Sophia?
Thank you. I want to thank Commissioner Casey for considering that. I also wanted to say, maybe we should say, instead of if feasible, and the reason why I'm saying this is because I've heard that before, and everybody will just use that as, sometimes it gets used as a catch-all not to do things, and just say as needed, and instead of if feasible, because if it's something that's needed, there should be a way to do that. I just see this board really needing an unusual focus on protection. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia and Commissioner Casey. Any further comments or discussion? Okay, thank you. Is there any strong opposition to staff?
Sorry, is it, which one are you asking about? Sorry, because these are two, they're two different proposals, so I just want to be super clear, sorry.
Yes, I was gonna do one each, just to see. Thank you. Do we have any strong opposition to adding the terms as needed to this text? Do we have a general agreement for including as needed to this text? Okay, it appears we have consensus on as needed. Going to the next. Commissioner Casey?
Sorry, I was getting ahead of myself. I'll wait.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any discussion or comments or questions regarding including the term feasible to this text? Commissioner Casey?
I think Commissioner Sophia's addition sort of covers that already. I think it would be duplicative. So I would say, since we are adding as needed, I don't think if feasible is necessary.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Then we may move forward. May we move forward? Yes. Okay, so. Thank you. Okay. So we have come to the end of this document. The commissioners did a great job at putting this together. I want to give you all a round of applause for this heavy lift. Thank you so much. Good job. So we're going to move on. Do we have any strong opposition for the staff?
We do public comment first.
On this part? Okay. I thought we were.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I see someone from the public, Philip. Philip? Do you have a comment, sir? We can't hear.
Maybe he's having problems. Maybe we can pass to Commissioner Dan and then come back.
Yes, Commissioner Dan?
Oh, hello, good evening, everybody. Dan Handelman, he, him pronouns, member of the commission. I'm glad to see you working on this so hard and getting things fixed up. So I guess I'll start with a comment I think I made last time, which is that the charter has specific language about what the board membership should look like, and that's not reflected right now in these areas of agreement. I really strongly suggest that we add them. I pasted into the Q&A the language from 2-1002 that has to do with lived experiences, systemic racism, and people who experience mental illness, addiction, or alcoholism. So I'd like to see that language added. I think that the use of the term benefits is confusing because we affirm that the folks who are doing this are going to be volunteers and not employees. So I'm trying to think of a better term. I realized that in the spreadsheet, which I wrote up about the budget, I didn't use a word at all for that. So for the things people are going to be getting, I mean, we had talked about reasonable reimbursement for expenses that are incurred as part of the service. But I think that some people might not be able to pay for these things up front. So reimbursement is also kind of a problematic term. They need to determine a way to get people money up front if they need it for childcare and stuff like that. So it might be something to think about, thinking of another term for that. A person who exceeds the reimbursable amount, the hourly amount, might end up being excluded from participating, or else they'd have to opt to do it without money. So if different people can participate in different ways, so that's just something to think about. I don't think it's necessarily a problem if that person's okay with it, but I just think, you know, it's just something to think about. And I don't know if insurance and retirement are compensation for volunteers. I've never seen that before. I don't know if you have any research to back that up, especially like putting money into somebody's retirement fund if they're only going to be part of this board for 8 to 9 years part-time. And I definitely think there's not enough money in the budget, which again, you can look at if you want to on the screen that I drew up, but not enough money to provide 24/7 security to one or more board members, particularly not on an ongoing basis, perhaps for a very short time. But a lot of times we see this kind of harassment against people who are involved, like their families get killed by police. And the best protection is to travel with other people, know your neighbors, document incidents, and then, ironically, for the board members, if this happens to them, file a complaint with the system if they see police harassing them. But I don't know if that was found in any research either about this kind of protection for board members. And finally, I'm a little bit worried about the number going from 25 to 33 without any kind of real discussion about it. I'm not sure if it had to do with not having an even number, if it went to 30. We have 20 people on the PAC, and we've never, I think, had a 10 to 10 tie. But I'm not sure that'll pencil out with the budget if you raise it to that high, because I wrote in for 30 people. So these are things that really might need more discussion when we get to the full commission, but those are my comments for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. Commissioner Debbie? You have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good, thanks. It's hard to tell when the sound comes on. So I kind of want to follow up on the diversity question about the diversity of the board. So right now it's, you know, it talks about over police communities and experience with community engagement. And Commissioner Handelman just talked about, we should also add in the things from the charter amendment. But then I also in the comments section, there was a passage from Denver that talks about other forms of diversity. And, you know, so I think we should, you might want to think about that. I think you want to maybe broaden the concept of diversity so that we're thinking about people, you know, age, ethnicity, what part of town are they from, you know, those kinds of things. That so when they're being selected, the people doing the selecting can kind of think about getting a, you know, a really good cross section with an emphasis on over-policed communities, but nevertheless also trying to factor in those other things. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Debbie. Philip?
I thank you everyone for working on this. It looks great. One thing I thought I'd mention under the removal requirements and process. One of the issues was failure to complete mandatory training. I thought that might be good to add a stipulation in there within maybe a certain amount of time, or just because sometimes training is hard to arrange and schedule, that sort of thing. But I understand it would go through the board first, so I'm sure there'd be plenty of opportunities for them to meet those standards. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anything, commissioners, is there anything that you would like to go back to and revisit following public comment to the document? Commissioner Sophia?
Yes, well, I did want to go back to the reference that Commissioner Randall had about what was in the charter. I meant to do that. I had forgotten about that. I know he had put it in the chat before. I would suggest at this point, letting the group decide on how they might want to proceed. Putting that in there, we can go through that now, or we can have or we could have the co-chairs do it. I don't know. I'm just asking the group I would like to see that put in there, but I want to ask the group and co-chairs how they'd like to proceed.
Co-chair, there's
Co-chair Tirsa?
Yeah, I would like to see the charter language reflected.
Thank you. Any further discussion around having the charter information reflected in section B1? Any comments or feedback? Do we have any strong opposition for including that? Do we have a general agreement for reflecting the charter? Thank you. May we move on? Commissioners, do we have anything additional that we'd like to revisit before we move forward? Commissioner Sheree?
Yeah, reluctantly, I think Dan is right. We should go back to the number of board members, and I want to make a proposal. It went from 25 to 33. I know that we wanted to have a not round number, so I'll make a proposal that it's 27 to 29 members. There was some talk about alternates, that we wanted to have alternates, and talk about people being burned out, so having a larger group would be better. I am hearing about budget concerns, and so I think proposing 27 to 29 instead of 33 is happy medium.
Thank you, Commissioner Sheree. Staff?
Sorry, I was having difficulty unmuting there. Yeah, it wasn't discussed. There were some comments in the side here that may be worth reviewing. So it had to do with the multiple of 3 given 3-year terms, so that there could be a stable, consistent number of people each time. That was discussed in the last meeting on the 10th, as well as previous conversations about there being a need for an odd number as a general practice, and that's where that seems to have come from. But yeah, just to clarify, although it wasn't discussed specifically today, that was the previous thing. Thank you.
Commissioner Sophia?
Yes, I just, excuse me, wanted to make a comment. Couple things. I didn't see any real difference between the 25 and the 33. I don't think it changed much in the budget, but I will say that it might be helpful, especially when it comes to alternates, to have more people on the board. Since those folks, if we're going to come from our emeritus group, or if we want to backfill, I mean, the more people we have on the board, the easier it might be for us to kind of cover each other when something comes up. So that's just my comment on having 33. I just don't think it's not going to be a big difference in compensation costs. It's only 3 people. It's just not that much difference. So that's just my thoughts. I think 33 is still good.
Any more discussion, comments, or feedback on the size of the board? Okay. Do we have any strong opposition to changing it from 33 to 27 board members? Any strong opposition? Do we have general agreement for changing it, the members of the size of the board from 33 to 27? I don't see any general consensus on the 27. Okay, do we have any strong opposition referring back to 33 members on the board? Okay, do we have a general agreement for the 33 members on the board? Okay, so it appears that we have consensus on 33 members to the board. Thank you. May we move on? Is there any additional items in the document that you would like to revisit before going to the final vote to refer? Co-Chair Obi.
Hey guys, and sorry about my being quiet. I'm still in the hospital.
Wow.
No, I just on the QA, and it's a good point. I think I actually going to leave this up to the full commission. But as stated, there actually is no number on how many alternates. I think the issue is that we want to have people with previous experience be alternates too. So it's going to be one of those bridge things about when the new board is created, who becomes like the first set of alternates, whether it's like applicants or other members as well. I think there's not a solid thing for that now. And maybe I would suggest leaving it up to the future board to amend their bylaws to get an alternates number once they're like a few years in, to solidify that versus having like a solid number now. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Staff?
So just to clarify, Commissioner Obi, that would make it something that would be talked about as part of the transition and therefore something that we should mark in the garden plot, right?
Yes. But if brought up, I mean, we can definitely also talk about it in the full commission when we refer the document. But I think it might be a bit more of a transition thing.
Thank you for clarifying.
Commissioner Sheree?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking also. Leave it up to the board regarding the number of people on the board. They can determine that at a later date if they think they need 33 or less or more. Leave it up to the full board, or leave it up to the full board conversation, and then leave it up to the actual board for those decisions. That's what I was thinking. Just agreeing with what Obi's saying for this part, but also for the number of members on the board.
Thank you, Commissioner Sheree. Staff?
Yeah, so just to clarify, it's totally fine to have, I mean, the full commission, the full PAC will be looking at the recommended text, including how many people are on the board. In terms of, you know, leaving it to the full PAC to decide, that's fine, and they will be. In terms of the oversight board itself deciding its own size, just to clarify, that is one of the explicitly written things that the city council asked the PAC to come up with. So it's up to the PAC how and what, you know, how to respond to that request, but just wanted to make sure that that was clear. It's in City Council Resolution 3754 Exhibit A. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Commissioner Sheree? Okay. Do we have any further discussion or comments in regards to board size or alternates? May we move on? Amazing. So the subcommittee has completed discussion on this document, and next on the agenda is discussing whether the subcommittee should refer the document to the full commission with all changes we've made today incorporated into the text. There's a potential agreements document that has circulated that gives some context as to this decision. It is also says that co-chairs and staff will be authorized to fix some of the formatting and typos prior to full commission's consideration. Is there any strong opposition to referring the draft areas of the agreement to the full PAC for their consideration? Is there general agreement around referring the draft areas of the agreement to the full PAC for their consideration? Amazing. So we have reached a consensus that we will now refer the document to the full PAC for consideration. I will now like to pass it over to staff to discuss next steps.
All right, thank you, congratulations. This concludes the work of the subcommittee, and also means a couple of things that are coming up will be that were not yet determined are now determined. So again, congratulations. This document will go on to the full commission for its consideration. The full commission will meet next Monday, April 24th, and will also meet next Thursday, April 27th, and the following Monday, May 1st. If necessary, it can also meet on May 4th to finish this phase of work. There are now 3 documents that are going to be discussed at the full commission. There's a document that was referred out of the subcommittee on oversight staff about that subject matter. There is a section or a document referred just now out of this subcommittee, and then there is a shorter document with definitions of 2 terms that this council asked the PAC to define accountability and independent judgment. There's also some phase of work transition tasks, and all of that together will be resolved in the next 3 or 4 meetings of the full commission next week and the week after. So following this meeting, the final text of this document will be sent out to the full commission, along with the other documents that were just mentioned. And leading into next week's meeting on Monday, that your colleagues who have not been as close to this as you have been for the last several weeks will be working on, reading it and getting ready to discuss it at the full commission. If there are any changes that you would like to propose, you can, or any member can propose them via email or bring them up when we get to the full commission. And if they are proposed via email or otherwise in advance, they'll be shown as track changes and discussed, much like today, where we knew there were 6 things that needed to get discussed. It'll be known in advance that way as well. And as soon as all those are concluded, the commission will conclude its phase of work, the structure and details phase, and move on into the next phase, which will be a transition plan and broader system. Any questions on any of that? Great, I'll pass it back over to the facilitators.
Thank you, staff, for that, that information. So again, congratulations, subcommittee. It's been a pleasure working with you this last couple of weeks and getting through this document. This is now a time for facilitators and co-chairs and staff to summarize any items already brought up today which didn't fit in today's agenda. We'll recap those items here and use them in developing future agendas. We won't be using this time to add new items not previously mentioned or discuss any items, but we will use this list to develop future agendas for the full commission so that these items can be addressed. Co-facilitator, do you have anything that you would like to add at this time?
No, the only comment it was about Commissioner Obi about transition and alternates. That's my.
Thank you, co-facilitator Victoria. Co-chairs? Co-chairs, anything you would like to add?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Co-chair Obi, you have any additional?
Nothing to add here. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff?
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. As a reminder, you can submit advanced public comment to the Police Accountability Commission via web form, voicemail, or postal mail. Thank you to all the members who attended today's meeting and for your contributions today. Thank you also to the interpreters. Finally, thank you to the members of the community for attending and contributing your thoughts and questions. If you are not already signed up for email updates, please also sign up to receive updates from the PAC. The subcommittee has finished its work. Congratulations to you all. The full commission will begin reviewing the subcommittee's work as soon as next Monday, April 24th. The time is now 8:11 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned. Have a